Okay, so we've talked about autism, we've talked about change, we've even talked a little bit about choice and how we can make choice easier for people. And of course, I bring it back again that this is all about life planning. And in living our lives, all the time we make choices. We sometimes make wrong choices and we get things wrong. But that's okay. So if we learn from those situations that we get ourselves into that aren't good decisions, then we can come back and change our decisions going forward. So how do we support somebody with autism in doing that? Well, when we talked about the PCP process earlier, we talked about the map and path. And in this section, I'm going to talk about arranging a map and path meeting. And the person who is responsible in the process for arranging the map and path meeting would be the facilitator, the PCP trained facilitator who has all the tools at their disposal to use for this. So the person that is a facilitator has a specific role. They need to be independent. So it's no good having a family member being the facilitator or a member of staff supporting the person being facilitator. Ideally, it's somebody that isn't directly involved with the person whose life is being planned. Because this person is an advocate, so they mustn't have a vested interest in any particular party. The only people they have a particular interest in is the person at the centre, the individual that we're supporting. So they become that individual's advocate. They should have good coordination skills because they are coordinating a number of different groups of people to come together around the individual in order to support them in planning their lives going forward. They may be advisors and advising about the process, advising about how we make these things happen. They may have particular expertise in certain areas. And also they may be a trainer, and it's useful for facilitators to have the ability to train people because prior to arranging a map and path meeting, they might want to, or it might be useful to train people who are involved in that particular process with that individual, so they all know what to expect from the process. So the planning meeting is one of the key opportunities to honour and celebrate the person and his or her uniqueness, because each individual is unique. I'm unique, you're unique, everybody has their own blueprint and we all have our own uniqueness. So in this case, we're going to celebrate the uniqueness of that person, including the uniqueness that their specific disability brings with them. So the purpose, why are we doing it? What's it all about? We're looking at sharing information between key people who are involved with that person and with their lives. We're looking at discussing the wants, the wishes, and the dreams of this person who's identified. So we often have dreams. We might not realise our dreams. Doesn't mean to say they have to happen. But we get through life having dreams for the future and things that we would really like to do. People have things we call bucket lists. Before I die, I'm going to do this and this and this in my life. And these are huge motivators that keep us moving forward in a positive way through our lives. So why shouldn't people with disability have dreams? Why shouldn't they have expectations? So it involves futures planning. What's going to happen in the future? What's this person likely to be wanting to do with their future? And it incorporates this person's dreams, their desires, and their preferences in terms of what their long-term goals may be. So moving forward with the system, we recognise that person-centred planning is a learning disability model, and that there are important differences in typical strengths and limitations between people with autism spectrum conditions and people with learning difficulties or disabilities. And we come back to my model on the chart that these are specific areas of difficulty for people with autism. So these will be different, these impacts, to people, let's say, who have cerebral palsy, people who are wheelchair bound, but have neurotypical thinking, cognitive processes. Every different condition or disability comes with its own difficulties and challenges. But people with autism will have these specific areas of difficulty, which is why we need to approach it differently. So understanding patterns of thinking and the communication methods that are peculiar to people with autism spectrum conditions is really important. And it's important that we identify the person's strengths and what they need help with. So having looked at the different structures, looked at the different systems that we can use to support and help people through their day-to-day life, we recognize those and we have those in place. So the important thing is, if you're planning a PCP meeting, to be prepared. So before the meeting, think about something like an about me activity, which can be completed by the individual in a way that they're comfortable with. So it can be written, it can be pictorial, or both. And just at the moment, because I'm working through person-centered planning with people in the day services here in Cyprus, then we're doing about me work. Now that's a book that they write about themselves. And if they're not able to write, that's okay. We get photographs of them doing different things. We get photographs of members of their family, their next door neighbours, their friends, their pets. We get photographs of where they live, where they go during the day, whether it be school or college or day service. And we start to build up a visual pictorial book about this is me, this is who I am. And it's like an album and it's fantastic. So they have great fun putting this together. It can take time, but this is all part of the pre-planning. So we absolutely know who that person is. So it also would include people's likes and dislikes. So things I like, things I don't like. And that's important to recognize. I don't like dogs. So then we know that we don't build in activities that include dogs. Also, these are my dreams for the future. And this can be a long-term activity. Now, I've already said that people with autism have difficulties in terms of the imagination and thinking outside of the parameters that they live in, often thinking as snapshots. But if we know the person well, we can imagine the things they may have as dreams. Now, the young man that I referred to some time back who went up in an airplane, he would never have thought of going up in an airplane. It would never have occurred in his life. But he was given the opportunity to try it. Now, he might have hated it. He may not have enjoyed the experience at all. Nobody knew. But he actually loved it. And so that young man, if he was saying, these are my dreams, one of his dreams may be to go flying regularly every month. No, he was never going to be a pilot. But lots of people are never going to be pilots. But he could experience that flying sensation. He could go on different aircraft. He could, having taken that initial risk, there was a dream that for him could come true. We use the circle of support diagram to identify who is close to the person. And I'm just going to draw one here. Again, we're very visual with this. So if we're putting a circle of support together, that's what it looks like. You can have as many rings as you like. And in the middle is the person, right at the center. This is me. And then talking with the person and in getting to know the person, you know who the people are that are close to them. Now, this is not about the people that you say are close to them. This is about the people that they're likely to engage with a lot, that understand them and that they trust. Likely to be family members, but not always is. In terms of advocacy, it may not be family members. But okay, so just for argument's sake, we put mum here. We might put sister here. They're close to me. They're people I like and I want close to me. Then we might have the neighbour. It might be that they think their social worker is very important to them and they see a lot of them. So, social worker. Then we might have people like the priest, the doctor. It might be that we have people from the school, and so on and so forth. So we recognise it visually. We work with the person to get those people put in the right circles. This closed circle will become the circle of support. And those are the people who are involved in this decision-making process, the people who are key to that individual's well-being and growth. So we put the circle of support together to identify who is close, who needs to be involved, and who we want to invite to meetings if we're a facilitator. So we need to then communicate with those key people who are in the circle, who are important to the person, and inform them of the process. These are the people that you might do some training with before you get into the meeting. So obviously it has to be decided when it'll happen, where it'll happen, time it'll happen, and the place it'll happen. And what's really important here is the place that it's going to happen. So let's put it in a place that this individual knows, an environment they know, and that they enjoy spending time in. Doesn't have to be in an office, it can be anywhere. I've actually known PCP meetings be held in a garden. You know, it doesn't matter. As long as you can all communicate together, that's the important thing. Important also to think about the when, in terms of this person's routines, their day, what's a good time of day to do this. It is going to be change, so how do we build in change that is going to be this meeting? We also need to discuss what's up for, to agree what's up for discussion and what is not. So we're not here to discuss somebody's bad behaviour. We're here to think positively. We're here to break down the barriers. It may be that there are family issues, and that's not coming up into the discussion. This is going to be a positive meeting about moving forward. So we need to set the boundaries of what discussion is allowed. Who do you invite? The people from the circle of support. The people who the individual trusts, who'll think positively, have great ideas, and who will then help move the process forward. It's useful if we're running a PCP meeting to arrange for somebody that's going to take notes. Facilitator needs to be active, so they're not the note taker. It's important that close family people and close people to the individual necessarily aren't taking notes, that they're really able to focus on the meeting. So we might need somebody who's not actually involved, but is just there to take notes. And we decide on the method of communication, how are we going to communicate? Because we want this individual to understand what's going on. It's all very well everyone standing talking verbally. Well, if all that verbal communication is going to raise anxiety in the individual, it's not going to help them, is it? So how are we going to communicate? What's the best method for this person in terms of communication? And if necessary, how do we help the individual to know that it's their meeting? I talked about the pink meeting, and I've got some photos of another meeting that I'm going to show you so you'll understand how we made that meeting that person's meeting, and he really knew it was all about him. So the format, we want the beginning, which is introductions, because maybe some people in the circle of support haven't met each other before. Explain what's going to happen in the meeting. And we also agree the roles of people in the meeting, what it's all about, and also the rules within that room, the rules of the group. Then we have discussions that are all focused on the individual. We ask questions. We encourage everyone to be involved. And mostly we include the individual. We stay positive, and we capture the theme of discussions on a wall chart, which I've got a picture of, so you can actually see how we capture information. The facilitator needs to help people to make decisions. So decisions have to be made, but they're made within the group, with people who we know have an understanding of the individual, who actually are positive about the individual, the person, and are in a position to make decisions. So for instance, if there's a decision to be made about making something happen in somebody's life that's going to affect their financial stuff or living accommodation, the key people who have that information need to be in that room. Then looking at conclusions, ensure that there's a summarized conclusion at the end of the meeting that everyone understands and that everybody is agreed to. Then we follow up. So we agree a date at the meeting when there's going to be a review of what's happened with stuff. Where are we at in terms of developing this person's life? And we need to put in place mechanisms for follow-up and keeping things on track so we don't lose sight of what the plan's doing. Now, plans that I've been involved with pre-COVID, of course, we've had a lot of difficulties because with all the lockdowns and the barriers and not being able to go out and not being able to do things, there are people whose plans have been very much slowed down. But I think I can live with that at the moment because of the COVID restrictions, because I think many human beings' plans have been put on hold because we've had 2 years of COVID. So I don't feel bad about that. What I'm pleased about is that coming out of the COVID lockdowns and things now, we're able to go back to the plans, review what we did before the restrictions came into place, pick it up and move on from there. So we haven't lost what we did before. So it's all about the person. So we need to try and make the meetings positive and fun. And the person is surrounded by people. The room is full of people who are there for them, their circle of support. How nice is that? How good is that? The person's interests can be shown in things like photographs of them doing things, colours that they like, tasty treats that they enjoy. So it's all about their special time, all built in around them. We need to know this person really well. And it's good to encourage the person to greet their own guests. I know it might sound strange, but very good to encourage people to meet guests. Now, in terms of autism, I've had PCP meetings in the past where the goal was just for the person to be in the room. Because a lot of autistic people find it difficult to be in a room with other people. So the first goal, right from the start, is can this person stay comfortably in the room with this group? And they may be in the room and walking around and twiddling and rocking and doing all the stuff they do. But as long as they're within the room, they're in the space, they're with these people who are there to support them, and they're comfortable, then we've achieved some goal. That might be the starting point. Because some people with autism also have quite profound learning difficulties. They may not verbally communicate at all. So we need people there who really can understand and interpret the person's behaviour. We don't want somebody in a room being anxious. We need it to be a positive experience. So what are the strategies we've got in place to help that person to stay in this room and just be aware of all people and pick up on what they can pick up on? So in order to support somebody with autism, we need to understand the impacts of Communication and language, expressive and receptive language and communication. We also need to be able to understand their social and emotional understanding. If we're going to have the goal for somebody to go out to work, which might well be a goal, what's their level of social understanding? What are the barriers to them actually being in the workplace? Are they going to be sitting and rocking in their chair and annoying other people in the room? Are they going to show behaviours and rituals that are going to upset other people in the room? Are we going to do some work with the workplace to help the workplace to understand the person and it's okay? Are we going to change the culture within workplaces so they're more receptive to accepting people who have difficulties and disabilities? This is all work that needs to be done in terms of social and emotional understanding. I've currently got people here in Cyprus who are out volunteering at the moment, which is often the first step to going into work, is to do volunteer jobs, because there's lots of charities who are very keen to have volunteers, and it gives an opportunity for these young people to learn about the work ethic, to learn how to meet and greet other people, to learn how to start a conversation properly. So at the same time as we're placing these people with support, with a staff member, within these charitable organisations, things like charity shops, animal shelters, you name it, then we're also working on social skills programmes with them, social development programmes at the same time. We need to consider their sensory issues, maybe do a sensory assessment so that we know the impacts of that environment on that individual. If we're going to put them in different environments, or if we're going to support them into different environments, then what's the impact of that environment on them? These are important factors. And the environmental responses. So how is that environment going to interact with this person? Things like, you know, how is the room set out? How big is the room? How are people within that environment going to react to this individual? And very often we'll take somebody to a specific environment just to visit it when it's empty. So there's no people to get in the way and cause more difficulties. So they go first when it's empty a few times, get used to the environment, then they go when it's quiet and there's a few people perhaps, and then they build up to coping with the environment in the way that it interacts. So how do we ensure that the person knows the meeting is about them and for them? How do we involve them in the meeting? We talked about considering the room itself and the impacts that that might have. And we think about who should attend. People who can give permission, people who are decision makers, and people who are enablers. So, important things to recognise at the beginning of any meeting. For the people in the room to agree, to be public about what do we like about this person. To actually say it in front of everybody. What do I like about this person I'm here to support? Really important, isn't it, that you like the person who you're there to invest in and support. What are this particular person's strengths and their interests? What are the things that they really enjoy? What are the things that they're really good at? Because there might be some things that really they're good at. Now, just let's remember that people with autism particularly love ritual. They love things to be the same. They love repetition. So some jobs, for instance, repetitive work that other people get bored with, that other people don't want to do. People with autism will say, bring it on, because I can sit at this conveyor belt and I can put this in this all day long and love it. I'm not looking for other stimulation, I'm looking for sameness. So they can actually be really, really, really useful employees in different environments where they are enjoying and getting a lot from repetitive tasks. These are very, very good for people with autism. But they also have lots of strengths and interests. And if we can actually build in work or opportunities that are around their obsessional interests, even better. I had one guy who was obsessed with railway timetables. This is back in the UK. He was totally obsessed with railway timetables. He was high functioning autism and able to speak. And he was found a job in the ticket office on Paddington Station. And you'd think, how can somebody with autism work in all the crowds on Paddington Station? Well, he actually worked in a little kiosk, so it was his own little box. So it was safe space for him. Only ever one person came to the window at a time, so he only had to process one face or body at a time. And he loved talking about railway timetables. So people that were coming to buy tickets to go on the train were the great group for him to be with, because he got all the answers. And he was a brilliant employee, as it turned out. So this is where we consider the environment, we consider their strengths, and we consider what they're interested in. And what their dream might be for the future. If they're not able to tell us, then knowing the person, we can make guesses about what they might enjoy for the future, what dreams they might have, knowing that individual. As I say, we do, all of us change our dreams from time to time, so it's not set in stone. Who are the people who are important in this person's life? What resources are available to them? Is financial resources in place? Are there living accommodations in place? Is there transport in place that they can use? Are there work opportunities around that they can use? What is it they need in their life, and are there the resources to meet that need? If there are not the resources to meet that need, is it possible that we can obtain those resources in order to support them? And what challenges and obstacles might there be to this person meeting their goals? Let's recognise the challenges. Let's recognise the barriers and the obstacles and find ways of getting past those if we possibly can. So what do you need if you're a PCP facilitator? There are things that you need. You need very large pieces of paper, because you're going to write on huge pieces of paper at the mapping path meeting. You need blue tack to stick things on the wall, your large pieces of paper or anything else. You need a ready supply of different coloured marker pens, because we're going to make this visual, and things like photographs or objects which are important to the individual, just to reinforce the fact that this is about them. Now, when I say writing on the wall, this is from a PATH meeting, and PATH means Planning Alternative Tomorrows with Hope. Isn't that wonderful? Don't we all do that in our lives? Don't we try and plan alternative tomorrows, and we hope that they're going to happen? So this sheet, actually at a meeting, maybe this size or even double, we go big, we go in your face. And what's written on this sheet is the things that have been said in the meeting. So this, at this end, we're looking at, this is how things are now. This is the person's life now. Then we look at where that person's life can go. We look at how they're going to stay strong and how we're going to be able to keep them strong. And the next steps that we need to do to get to where that person is going to be the goal, and the bold steps that we need to do. We look at the things that that person enjoys, and it says here, life feels good. We look at things that people say about the person, that's all written down as well. So then we start with the actions and where we're going to go with the actions and who's going to do what, and we date it, we put dates on it, and we keep it positive and possible. Positive and possible being the key words when you have a mapping path meeting. And you can see the use of colour. We've already talked about colour. We've already talked about visuals and how important that is. So once we get into this, you can see that we're really cashing in on our knowledge of what autism is about and how we help people with autism with their understanding. It may be that they won't be able to read words, so can we find some pictures that will do this? But either way, we're capturing the information that's coming out of the meeting. This will be done at the time of the meeting, and the facilitator will be there with their pens, capturing all the information that they're able to bring from the circle of support and the people in the room. So it's a goal-setting tool. It also maps out a vision and a future for that individual. It helps families to think about the future and that there is a future for their sons and daughters. And then it works backwards to see, okay, this is where we want to be, but what are the steps that we need to put in place to get there? So it works backwards to determine those steps. One of the things that I hear so much, when a parent first has a small child, a baby, they think about the future. Parents will always talk about, oh, look, he's going to be a doctor, or oh, look, he's going to do this or that, or she's going to do this or that. It's natural that you think futuristically for a small baby. Then you notice there's a few difficulties with your child. They're not meeting their milestones or whatever else is going, might be physical disabilities. And then, lo and behold, you get a diagnosis. So there's a problem. The child becomes a problem. They've got their label. Now, the label isn't a bad thing, because what the label does is it helps the parent to understand the condition their child has. It helps the child to understand that actually it's okay. It's okay. It's not me just being bad. I have a condition. And it helps other people to understand how they need to support that child or young person. So diagnosis is important. But once you get to that point of diagnosis, the whole looking forward to the future changes. It's like, so now what's the future likely to be? And in times gone by, as we talked about before, looking at the history, before we had self-advocacy and before we had empowerment and person-centered planning, the future was pretty grim. The future was, I'm always going to be doing the same thing for the rest of my life. I'm going to live in the same place with the same people, and that's my life. And that's how it was. But now, lo and behold, we have opportunities. Now, lo and behold, we have systems to allow change and for people's lives to develop and grow in a very similar way to the neurotypical population. So we're going to identify the dreams that these people have. And we're going to think about goals and the ideal goal setting time for person-centered planning purposes. Easy for me to say, person-centered planning purposes. I'm going to say it again. Thinks about 1 or 2 years ahead is a reasonable way to look forward. It's not a very good image, but this is an action plan again. This is a whole other image, a different type of action plan, which is looking at the future. And what it's showing is that it's a collaborative process, people working together, people sharing ideas. And it actually helps the individual also to create a plan for their own life with support. So the team develop a map to serve as the compass or the director that points in the direction of a positive future for the individual with autism. Meetings include personal and informal atmospheres and discussions of key issues and development of a concrete plan of action to begin and start right away from that meeting. So here we have another model. We have the dreams here. We have the story of the individual first. What is their story? Where were they until now? What have they been doing until now? What's the now? Okay, where do we want to be? What's the dream? What are our nightmares? What's that person's nightmares? What are the things that they really can't handle, they really don't like, that would really make them anxious, really upset them? So let's acknowledge what those are. Let's put those down so we're aware of those and we find ways of coping with those. Everyone contributing. So we have contributions from everybody that's in that circle of support, that's invited to the meeting and is in the room. And then we look at what it takes to make the dream happen. What have we got to do to make that happen? And then we come up with agreements, actions, who's going to do it, what they're going to do, and by when are they going to do it. So we put dates against things. People sign up at this meeting to what they're going to do to make this work. So one side, we've got them, who is in the room, who are the supporters that are part of this contract, which is what it becomes, and what are the reactions and what are the sign-ups to this? What are people actually signing up to move that person's life forward? So thinking about essential lifestyle planning, which works together with PCP, what do people like and admire about you? Who are the important people in your life? What's important to you now and in the future? What's important for you now and in the future? What's working for you now? Let's acknowledge what works well and not throw away anything that is positive. And what's not working so well? What can we just deal with and get rid of if it's a nuisance in your life, it's not actually helping you? What actions need to happen to achieve that person's dreams and aspirations? Who's going to do what to make sure that those things happen? And this is one of my lovely young men from Ayanapa, and a meeting I facilitated just before the lockdown. And look at that picture. Now, this young man doesn't have verbal communication. He's profoundly autistic with huge ritualistic issues and behaviours. And I have to say, I do have permission to use these pictures. But he has huge problems and huge issues with getting through day-to-day life. Very, very complex young man. And yet, look at him. He's having a great time. There he is. He's got, at the centre here, this is his circle of support. So they're photographs of the people in his life who were important to him. And there they are. This is the paper where we're going to make the map and path. At the side there, we've got photographs of him when he was younger, and we've got things that he's made. So, because he's quite artistic, so we've got various crafts that he's done, and we're actually making it about him visually. He's very into this certain Disney film. So we've got a big poster of that Disney film on the wall. Here on this desk at the side, pictures that he's painted and drawn, and lots of different crafts that he's made and things that are important to him. And there he is, and this is just before his meeting starts. Look at that wonderful image there of the happiness in that young man's face. Yes, it's great. And as we work through, you can see now here are the people who are close to him, that you've seen the pictures, family and friends. These are things that we like about him. He's attractive, he's caring. People like his innocence as well, that he's affectionate and he likes cuddles and sociable and musical. Brilliant. Let's pull those things out. What can we use here? The fact he's sociable, great. The fact he's musical, there's a talent we can perhaps build on. So he's talented at drawing, and there's a picture of one of his drawings. He's good at dancing. He's good at gardening, singing, craft, mimicking other people. It's another thing that he said he was good at. And he's got good sense of rhythm. What are the things he likes? Pick out a few. He likes food. He likes elephants, movies, Disney characters, animals, running, swimming, cooking. He likes frappe, who doesn't? So here, all of the, and he likes going on the trampoline, and he doesn't like cooked onion. He doesn't like people twiddling with their hair. That's very aversive to him, to something like that. He doesn't like people who scratch clothing. That's again a trigger for him. He doesn't like people being sad. He doesn't like people clicking or fiddling with their hands. And he doesn't like things that are noisy and being bossed around. Oh, he does. Things that he's good at, independence and self-esteem. This is where we recognise he can volunteer with animals. He can do a little job. He can do cleaning, gardening, and mosaic and drawings. These are all things that he could possibly do. So this is part way through the meeting now here. And we can see here I've drawn a little house, because then we're going to talk about where he'd like to live and who he'd like to live with. So we're really starting to get into the big life planning now. You can see it's for real. This is for real. So the map, the whole map actually grows and grows and grows as the people in the room are brainstorming what's great about him, what the positives, and where can his life possibly go. What a fantastic opportunity. Now you can see the people in the room. And how many people actually attended that meeting? So lots of family and friends and staff supporters all in the room. And this is him sitting at the front, grinning away, sitting at the front of the room and very much part of what's going on. Very much part of what's going on. I'm telling you, he absolutely got every single moment of that and loved every single moment of it. We'll be coming back shortly to his next meeting. People in that room on that day signed up to him going out socially every week. There were some beautiful young ladies here that said they'd love to take him out for a coffee or to eat once a week. They'll volunteer to do that, to help with his social skills. And then I said, well, hang on a minute. Look at him. If he's going out eating and socialising, what's he got to wear? Has he got any nice clothes to wear, fashionable clothes? So his brother and sister said, you know what, we'll take him shopping. His mother said, yeah, I'll give you the money. Okay, so sensible. You don't go shopping with mum, for goodness sake. Go shopping with your siblings, people your own age that are going to be fashion conscious and know the stuff that you should be wearing. So that's all been set up. Well, it was set up and it did happen that he would go out shopping. We recognised friends of his that he could go and do a weekly activity with. Again, people with autism. They're not going to be friends in the true sense of the word, but they're going to do activities together. From this also, he got 2 jobs. People in the room, one of them has like a small farm, and she said, you know what? Let him come and look after my chickens, and I'll pay him to do it. Fantastic, thank you for that. So he's going to go and feed the chickens and clean out the chickens and get paid to do that. And somebody else said, let him come walk my dog. I could do with a dog walker. Would he come and walk my dog? And I'll pay him to do it. Wow. So every time he goes doing the chickens, every time he goes walking the dogs, he gets a little packet with his money in as a small amount of pay. It doesn't need to be big. The whole principle of doing something for somebody else and getting paid for it is huge. Because for these individuals with disabilities, people do things to them. They don't do things for other people and get recognised for that. That's not the model historically. So now we have a model where we're making an opportunity for these people to be recognised members of the community, to actually give their services to other people in ways that they can. Not only to give their services to other people, but people are going to value enough to pay them for that. Fantastic, isn't that what life's all about? With his crafts, he creates lovely drawings, and those have been turned into Christmas cards and greetings cards as well. All from this process. None of those things would have happened without the support of this inner circle, which is quite a lot of people. His mum isn't actually in this picture, but she was over here somewhere. Quite a lot of people, and it's a nice big room You see that we've got space here because of his autism. Okay, that's fine, we can work with that. So very, very positive. Nice. So we come back to risk because we spoke about risk. So we have to identify risks and risk severity. Now, if this young man happened to have an allergy to chickens, and we noted that, well, you wouldn't take the risk of putting him with chickens. That would just be absurd. So you find something else. But let's identify what risks they are and note any actions that are in place now, which will reduce the risks, and see how we can, what actions we can put in place. So things like support plans can help with risks. So this person has this particular behavior, and that might create a risk. So how do we support that person so we don't get into that behavior? Or if we do get into that behavior, how do we then bring their anxiety down and manage that situation? And that gets written down. And everyone that's involved in supporting them knows that plan and that strategy for supporting them and bringing the risk down. How do we adapt environments? How do we adapt places where they go to work so we reduce risks? What's going on in the environment that we can control? So remember, in terms of risks, it's not that we don't take risks, we're not risk averse. What we do is we use risk taking or risk assessment as an enabling tool that actually allows people to do things that we would otherwise fear of allowing them to do. So we're reducing the risk to mild or moderate, and then off we go. Let's take the risk. So some sample notes from person-centered planning meetings. On academic side, in terms of banking, this person likes money and checking. They actually check the resident housing money every week. Now I've got, again, a young man in the office in Ayanapa, and he actually likes money and checking and things. So he's now doing the daily cash tin every day for the service. He's being employed at the service to help them with the checking of money, and he's correct every time. It's very precise. So he's had that opportunity to not only get out of the main area into the office and have some space, but also to feel valued, also to feel that he's contributing to the place, rather than just having things done to him. He's actually doing things for them. Huge, huge impacts to his self-esteem. Independent living, let's say residential. If the rules are difficult, we write out the rules in a different way that the person can understand. We make healthy choices. We help people with healthy choices. And in terms of Rebecca, it says here, the teacher needs to listen. The teacher needs to listen. And then we go back to the apartments and we get ready for bed. In terms of social life, employment, all these things that are part of our day-to-day lives. We make notes, we show what we're going to do, use the microwave and bathroom in the hallway, ask questions, practice asking questions when they need something, go to the gym, show the fridge. There are all sorts of different things that we need to remember to do to support that person in their day-to-day life. So the last thing we need to remember to do is to capture all that information. And by looking at those great big pictures of the map and past meetings, you can see how it's captured. Not only is it captured on the great big piece of paper, but also you have somebody taking notes. Who has signed up to doing what to make this happen? And we follow up, but we get commitment from individuals while they're in the room, because nobody's going to think about it too much once they leave the room. So let's catch them now while we've got them. Catch them while we've got them. Get them to sign up. What are they going to do to support this individual? We need to include actions that people are going to take, and we need to have their names signed up and the dates by which they're going to make things happen, because otherwise things will slide. So we have to make sure we get dates down and we measure it against that. The other thing that's important to remember is no idea anybody in the room has, and this is one of the rules, no idea is too far-fetched or too stupid. We need to think about risk-taking and enabling. So nothing is out of, unless, you know, I say, I want to be a pilot, well, okay. But let's find another way of getting somewhere near that sensation. Let's look at, okay, you can't be a pilot, but maybe you can fly. Maybe you can travel. So thinking positively about ideas, hanging on to this. So somebody said, I want to be a pilot, or we think he wants to be a pilot, or whatever. Let's not throw that away. Let's capture that on the wall and say, okay, the big goal would be to be a pilot. Well, life choices, life restrictions, not for everybody to do that, okay, but maybe we can work somewhere near it. And what does being a pilot mean? Okay, it means travel. Maybe travel's where we need to go. And how do we get this person flying abroad on holidays? Maybe for the first time ever. Also have the dialogue regarding managing expectations. As I said, we all have to do that in our lives. Life is not a utopia. I'd like to drive a Rolls Royce, but I know I won't. So let's be about right regarding expectations and be sensible about it. It's also important to set up the next meeting while people are still together. So we know that when we're going out of that room, we know who's signed up to what, we know when it's going to be achieved by, and we know the next time we're going to come back to review the plan. And also follow up on actions and review progress and see where we've got to. So all very positive, all very exciting for people with disability. Huge amounts of advocacy involved in this, and also self-advocacy. Even if people can't speak up for themselves, they have a mechanism for getting their needs and wishes and dreams met and known through people that are close to them, through the circle of support. So a very positive process, and one that I've seen huge changes in people's lives from having this process put in place. So I can only highly, highly recommend it. Thank you for that. Thank you for listening, and we'll follow up at some other stage.